I heard the fight before I knew who was in it. Two voices, sharp as barbed wire. One was rough and proud, the other was calm, a little tired but steady. Then a name rose out of the wind like a note you can't forget. Johnny Depp. I froze on the edge of the property line with my keys clenched in my fist because that was the fence I grew up with, and that was a voice I never expected to hear anywhere near it. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just a long road that curved in a strange way. I had come back to pack up after my mother's passing. I was supposed to clean out drawers and chase dust and say goodbye to the place that made me. I didn't plan on getting pulled into someone else's argument. But that fence had a way of pulling me into things. All my life it kept people on one side or the other. All my life it reminded me where I was allowed to stand. Sir, the calm voice said, steady and low. I'm telling you, the board was already split. The calf had its head through. I just widened the gap so it could pull free. I waited. I'm still here. I'm not leaving until this is made right. You widened the gap with my fence, the rancher barked. It was the same rancher who had argued with my mother 100 times. He was stubborn as summer and he did not forgive easily. People think they can come through, cut a board, toss cash and go. Not here, not with me. I didn't cut it, the calm voice said. I pried it with my hands. Look, I'll pay for a new section. I'll fix it with you. Whatever you want. I'm not trying to buy anything but peace. I stood there, keys still in a fist, and listened to Johnny Depp ask a rancher for peace. It didn't feel real. He sounded different from his films. Softer, gentle even. That made it stranger. If you had told me the morning would bring me that, I would have laughed. I was torn between turning back and stepping forward. I had spent years stepping back. I had spent years letting the fence decide. Then I heard my mother in my head, clear as if she was next to me, the way she used to be in the kitchen when the kettle sang, speak when your silence hurts someone. Keep quiet when your words would only serve yourself. I swallowed, breathed, and stepped forward. That fence didn't fall today. I said, my voice came out level, but my heart ran fast. The storm last night worked it loose. It was shuddering all week. I heard it, I should have fixed it. That's on me. Don't blame him for a storm. The rancher turned his anger in my direction. He didn't call me by name. He never had. We were neighbors, not friends. That was the rule of our line. You shouldn't take up for a stranger, he said. You don't know what he did. You don't know who he is. I know who he is, I said, and I know what a tired fence sounds like in the dark. It sounds like someone trying not to cry. Johnny let out a breath, the kind of breath that holds a thank you but doesn't want to make a show of it. I'm not here to make a mess, he said, and his voice came straight to me. I stopped because something small was in trouble. I'm sorry the wood split. I can help fix it, or I can step away. But I won't lie and say I didn't touch it. The rancher's jaw did that thing it did when he felt cornered by facts. He set his words like posts. Apology doesn't mend cedar, he said. Apology doesn't erase proof. I have proof the fence was weak, I said, and lifted a scrap of paper I didn't realize I had been holding. It had been tucked into the corner of a post yesterday, half caught and flapping like a torn wing. I had shoved it into my pocket out of habit, like a child pocketing a pretty rock. I didn't read it. I didn't know why I took it. Now I smoothed it and saw my mother's looping letters on the edge. He frowned. What is that? It's nothing important, I said too fast. I wasn't ready to explain a piece of my mother on a morning like this. May I? Johnny asked. He didn't reach, he waited. It struck me in the middle of all this that he was good at waiting. The rancher was good at not waiting. I had learned to stand still between them. I didn't give him the paper. I folded it small and slid it back into my pocket. Not yet, I said. I think it might be a clue, but I don't know to what. This is ridiculous, the rancher snapped. The fence is broken, that's the problem. We fix it or we don't. But we don't stand here telling stories about paper like children. Johnny's voice stayed even. Sometimes the story is the key, he said. Sometimes a broken fence is not the whole problem. Sometimes it's just the part you can see. That's not how ranches work, the rancher said. Maybe not, Johnny replied. But that's how promises work. The word promise changed the air. The rancher and I both felt it. We both lived under one, whether we admitted it or not. Down that fence line, at the far corner shaped like a quiet elbow, there was a spot only three of us had ever talked about. My mother, the rancher, and me. It was where we whispered what we were too afraid to speak out loud. I didn't know why Johnny said promise, but I felt it reach into that corner like a hand reaching into the past. What promise? I asked. Because I had to. Because if I didn't, my mother's voice would scold me from a place I could no longer reach. The one I kept in my pocket for years, Johnny said. He said it in a plain way, not dramatic, not proud. It made the rancher angrier, and it made me scared. The rancher puffed up like he was trying to take more room than his body could hold. You come here with your name, he said, and words like that, and you think I'll roll over and forgive a broken fence. You think you can tell me about promises on my land? I don't think anything about your forgiveness, Johnny said. I'm not owed it, but I was asked to come. I was asked to bring something back, and I won't talk about it if you don't want me to. I can hand it to her, he added, nodding toward me, and I can go. Asked by who? The rancher demanded. A woman who believed in the way wind carries messages, Johnny said. A woman who made a tiny drawing of a bird in the corner of her letters. A woman who said, if I ever came I should wait by the fence and listen before I spoke. I went hot and cold. My mother drew little birds when she signed notes to me, a lark, usually, small and plain, something about hope that knows where to land. I felt the folded paper in my pocket like it was burning through fabric. What else did she say? I asked, keeping my voice from shaking with both hands. That when the fence breaks, he said, it's time. The rancher cursed under his breath. Time for what? He asked. Time for strangers to wander in. Time for my line to be erased. Johnny's voice softened. Time for the box in the post to be opened. I still remember the first time my mother whispered to me about the post. I was a child. She said some people plant trees for the future. She and the rancher planted words. She said if I was ever lost I should go to the corner where the fence turns, and I should put my ear to the wood. She said I'd know it by the sound it makes, like a heartbeat under bark. She said, when I was grown and brave, and ready to hear what I didn't want to know, I'd open what was hidden. I told her I didn't want hidden things. She smiled sadly and said life hides itself anyway. Who are you to know that? The rancher asked. His voice was not so sharp now. It had the sound of a man who has been called back to a memory he's not ready to face. She told me herself, Johnny said. She sat next to me once and told me a story when I didn't deserve it. I kept a small thing for her. She said I'd know when to bring it back. I didn't for a long time. I held on and made excuses. Then a letter came. It had the drawing, and a date. Last night, so I drove. I had found that letter when I sorted my mother's papers. I couldn't read the whole thing. The page had been torn and tucked and stained with old tears. The edge I had in my pocket showed half a bird and the curve of the word tonight. I had wrapped it away in the sweater I kept for grief. I took it out now. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the rush you get when something finally lines up with itself. I unfolded it and showed them what I had. The rancher squinted and then his face did something I had never seen it do. It fell open. He took off his hat because he didn't know where else to put his hands. She drew that for you, he said to me. Not looking at me. I told her not to put faith in paper. She did anyway. She liked to leave small maps. Johnny watched without intruding. He had the patience of someone who understands that too much help is also a kind of harm. Do you want me to go? He asked the rancher. No, the rancher whispered. It was a word as rare from him as rain in July. No, you'll stay until we see this nonsense through. Then you go. I don't need strangers hanging around after. I felt a tiny relief. I wasn't ready for him to go either. Not because of who he was to the world. Because of who he had just become. Which was a person who might unlock a corner of my mother. I thought I'd never reach again. We went without fanfare. I walked ahead, because I knew the path by heart without needing to look. I knew every nail in that fence by sound. I knew the way the boards creaked under heat, and sighed under cold. I knew the way the corners softened the wind. I did not describe the sun, or the dust, or the sky. They did not matter. What mattered was the beat of my heart, and the footfall of two men behind me, who could not stand each other, but were bound by a woman and a promise. The corner post had been disturbed by the storm. You could tell in your bones. You can feel when something that has held itself up for years is leaning toward change. The top had loosened enough that a hand could pry more than just splinters. I pressed my palm to the wood. It was warm from the night air, and warm from my own blood. I asked my mother's forgiveness in my head for being late. I asked for strength for being on time. Do you want me to try? Johnny asked. I shook my head and worked my fingers into the seam. The post resisted, like it wanted one more day of keeping secrets. Then it gave. I lifted a small package tucked inside, wrapped in cloth that had gone soft with years and hope. I didn't cry. Not yet. I was beyond tears. There is a place you go past crying, where you are only a sound your body makes to itself. The rancher swore again, but it was not a curse this time. It was the old word people use, when they see birth or death or forgiveness. He touched the edge and pulled his hand back like he thought it would hurt. She really did it, he said. She really hid something inside my fence. Johnny stood, quiet as a story that knows its ending. May I? He asked again, careful. I nodded and put the package in his hands. He unwrapped it with the gentleness of someone who has learned that paper can bruise the past. Under the cloth was a little tin. He held it like it weighed more than it should. This belongs to you, he said to the rancher. It belongs to her. The rancher said. Then it belongs to both of you. Johnny said. There was a tiny keyhole. He reached into his pocket and brought out a small key wrapped in thread. He turned it between his fingers and then placed it on my palm. You do it, he said. She would have wanted that. My hand closed around the key on its own. It felt warm, like something that had been kept close to skin for a long time. I put it in the lock. It caught. I had to breathe slow, once, twice, 3 times, so that my hands didn't shake too hard. Then I turned. Inside the tin were letters. 3. One addressed to the rancher in her hand that he would know anywhere. One addressed to me, done in her gentle, steady print. One addressed to the man with the pocket watch, which made the rancher glance at Johnny's wrist and back again. Read the one on top, the rancher said. His voice broke. He coughed to cover it, then didn't bother again. Read it out loud. I need to hear her. I opened the top letter. It was to my love and my line, which meant both of us. The paper smelled like thyme and coffee, and the last night she sat awake thinking of all the things she couldn't fit into a day. I didn't read every word here, not inside this telling. I will never be able to give you exactly what she said, because some words are meant to be heard only by the people they were written for. But I can tell you the bones of it. She wrote about fences, how they keep things out and in. How they give shape to a place and steal from it at the same time. She wrote about the day they set this fence and laughed at how tired they were, and how they pressed their fingers into wet cement like children to leave their mark. She wrote about a night she sat at a bus station and cried until her throat was raw, and how a man sat beside her and didn't ask anything except if she needed somebody to hold on to something for her, so she didn't throw it away, just to feel strong. She wrote that he had kind hands. She wrote that he took her key like it was an oath, and he kept it without asking for thanks. She wrote that she had done a cowardly thing, and a brave thing and could no longer tell which was which. She wrote that she loved a man who didn't know how to forgive himself. She wrote that she loved a girl who didn't know how to stop carrying everything for everyone else. She wrote that time is a fence we only think we built. She wrote that when the fence breaks, it's time to open what should have been opened sooner, and she wrote instructions. My mother loved instructions. She loved recipes and lists and maps you made with your own hand. She wrote that inside the tin there would be a deed to a strip of land along the fence line. She wrote that when the fence broke because a living thing needed saving, the deed would pass first to the person who broke it. She wrote that if that person did not want it, they should hand it to the one who still hears the grass breathe. And she wrote this. Put in a gate, my loves. Put in a gate where you're used to a wall. Let something new move between you. Don't live with a scar you think is a line. I had to stop reading because the rancher was crying and making no sound, and that is a thing you don't talk over. It is a thing you stand near and hold with your own quiet. Johnny stood still too. He did not hide that he was moved. He let it be seen that his eyes were wet. It is a kind of kindness to show someone your face when they think they are the only one feeling something. The next letter was addressed to the man with the pocket watch. Johnny raised his brows. I do have one, he admitted. I don't wear it often. She must have noticed once. He didn't make a speech. He didn't turn it into a scene. He opened the letter and read it in his head. His mouth moved just once, as if he whispered thank you to no one and everyone. Then he folded it and slid it back into the tin without telling us what was inside. The rancher and I didn't ask. It wasn't ours. The last letter had my name on it. It was my name in her hand, round and careful, like how she used to braid my hair when I was small. I couldn't bear to read it right there with both of them watching me. I put it against my heart for later. I will tell you one thing it said, because it matters to the rest of you. It said, you kept what I gave you and also what I never meant to hand you. Set some down now. Leave space for your own voice. Under the letters was a folded paper that did not look like any note we knew. The rancher touched the edge. That's legal, he said, like a man who had done enough deals to know the feel of them without looking. He nodded to me. Open it. It was the deed she promised. It gave that strip along the fence line to the person who broke the fence to save a living thing. The words were fair and strange. They were the kind of words you sign when you believe in more than money. The rancher looked at Johnny. Well, he said, that's you. No, Johnny said at once, and his voice was not soft there. It was firm in a gentle way. No, I won't take your land. It's not mine, the rancher said, tapping the deed. It's hers, and she gave it to whoever broke the fence for a life. I didn't break it, Johnny said. The storm did. I only widened what would have snapped from the calf's panic. And I won't take what I don't need. But I know who this land is for. He took the deed and turned to me. You hear the grass, don't you? I didn't understand what he meant until I did. There are people who read maps and people who feel them underfoot. There are people who visit a place and people who belong to it. I had spent years running from this soil, and yet every time I fell apart in some apartment with too many rules and not enough sky, my mind came home to the hum of this ground. I had been pretending to be a visitor. I was not. I hear it. I said. My voice wasn't loud, it didn't have to be. The rancher closed his eyes like a man who had fought the truth and was too tired to wrestle anymore. Then it's yours. Johnny said, and held it out to me. The rancher did not argue with Johnny, he argued with himself. He wrestled with 1,000 old fights and the one fight that mattered. He looked at me not like a neighbor, but like something closer. Not blood, but something like it you can't name. He nodded once. It was stiff, but it was not empty. Put in the gate like she said, he told me. Not a door that slams. A gate that swings. I will, I said. My voice cracked. I let it. Something eased inside me. Something eased inside him. It felt like a knot that had been tied in us both when I was a child, and he was still a man who believed that money could keep loss away. The knot loosened. It did not vanish. Knots never fully vanish. But they stop strangling. They become part of the rope you use to pull yourself up. We mended the fence that day, not with nails or wood yet, but with something harder. We told the truth. Not all of it. Enough. We said what we could bear, and left the rest for a later time. The rancher admitted he had been angry at me for leaving, and angry at himself for not asking me to stay. He admitted he had blamed the world for a calf that was never saved years ago, and he had taken it out on anyone who dared put a hand on his boards. He admitted he didn't know how to read all the letters my mother left. I told him I could read them to him, slowly, one a day, like medicine we could swallow without choking. Johnny stayed until we reached that quiet part of the afternoon, when people say thank you in ways that don't involve the word. He said he'd be on his way. He said he could send someone who was good with fences if we wanted. The rancher grunted that he'd fixed fences before Johnny's first movie, and didn't need some fancy crew. Then he surprised me. He put out his hand. "Thank you," he said. "Not for the fence. For keeping a promise he didn't understand and didn't trust." Johnny shook his hand without squeezing too hard. "Tell her she chose well," he said. The rancher cleared his throat and nodded once like a soldier. I walked Johnny back to where his car waited on the road. He didn't ask for pictures or anything you'd expect from a story like this. He put the small tin back in my hands. "The letters are yours now," he said. "I only held them long enough to bring them home." "Why did she ask you?" I asked. It was a question I had no right to ask, and he had every right not to answer. He thought about it. Then he told me something simple. "Because I listened to her when it was inconvenient," he said. "Because sometimes a stranger is the only one who can do the errand with no family history buried in it. Because she trusted me without reason, and I wanted to deserve that. We don't get many chances to deserve a stranger's trust." "You did," I said. "You did more than she asked." He looked down like the ground had said something funny. "I broke a fence," he said, half joking. "That's not much." "You broke a line," I said. "And you built a gate." He smiled then, just enough that the air got lighter. "Take care of it," he said. "And take care of yourself." I watched him drive away, and I didn't feel the ending I would have felt before. I didn't feel the ache of something leaving. I felt the beginning of something staying. That night, I slept in my mother's room and read my letter under a lamp that hummed like a bee. She told me the story of the day I was born in words I never heard before. She told me about the way she failed, and the way she tried, and how both mattered. She told me she knew I would leave and come back, and she didn't know when, and she forgave me ahead of time. She told me to plant something that would outlive my fear. The next morning, the rancher came with his toolbox. He stood on the line like a policeman and a priest, and he looked awkward and older than he let anyone see. "We put in a gate," he said. "Today, we measured not with a tape at first, but with our bodies. We stood apart and then closer, and we decided how wide it should be, so that a calf could wander through, and a woman with her arms full of letters could pass without turning sideways. We argued. We laughed once. It sounded strange coming from him. Not wrong. Knew we set posts for the gate, and marked the place where the latch would click. We didn't finish that day. You don't fix years in an hour. But we started, and that matters." People asked me later if it was really him. If the man at the fence was truly the man they had seen in films. I said yes. But I also said it didn't matter, not the way they meant it. It mattered that a man heard a calf in trouble and stopped. It mattered that he kept a promise for longer than he needed to. It mattered that he stood by while a family cracked open and then closed again with more space inside. The name attached to him made the story brighter for some. It made it suspect for others. To me, it made it sweeter, that even people you think you know from far away can show up close and be simple and kind. Months later, when the gate was in and the grass had learned to grow through the new line, a small package came with no return address. Inside was a little bell on a strip of leather. No note. No need. I tied it near the gate, where the wind could find it. On certain evenings it made a sound so quiet you had to still your whole self to hear it. When it rang, I thought of promises. I thought of the way our hands trembled when we opened the tin. I thought of the day a fight over a broken fence turned into a story you could tell your children about the difference between a wall and a gate. The rancher changed. Not in the way television tells you people change. He didn't become soft. He didn't stop grumbling when bills came due, or when the weather played tricks on the cattle. He still swore when he smashed a thumb. He still talked to his horses as if they owed him rent. But he read the letters with me, one by one, and he let his voice break where it needed to, and he told me stories he had been saving under his tongue like coins. He said he didn't know what to do with the land on my side beyond the fence. I told him I had an idea. I told him I wanted to make it a place for the things that get left behind. Stray dogs. Stray kids who need an afternoon where no one asks them to explain themselves. Stray stories that need a home. He grunted. Then he said, "Your mother would have liked that." I invited the neighbor kids to help me build boxes for birds. We put one near the gate. The first spring, a small brown bird nested there. It wasn't a lark. I don't actually know if larks take boxes. It doesn't matter. We called it a lark anyway. We named one of the calves Hope, because we are not clever, and because the plain names are sometimes the truest. I stood by that gate many evenings and listened for the bell. It didn't ring every time. It didn't need to. It rang when I forgot to be patient. It rang when I almost shut down. It rang when the wind brought someone back down the road who had been gone too long. It rang the day I stood there and said out loud into the air, "I forgive you, Mom," and I meant it, and I forgave myself too for letting years go by without saying things that needed saying. People like to think endings are explosions. They like fireworks and big speeches. The ending I promised you, the one no one could predict, came as simple as this. A fight about a fence gave birth to a gate. A stranger held a key and returned it at the right time. A proud man cried where he could be seen. A woman stopped running. A calf grew up and got a scar on its knee, and a name from a girl who read it a story at dusk. Sometimes the wildest ending is the gentle one. Sometimes the loudest thing is the quiet click of a latch and a bell that rings when wind decides to carry it. That's what I learned on the day a famous voice stood at my fence and didn't try to be louder than the life that already lived there. Before I finish, I want to say this plainly. This is a work of fiction, told for your heart and your imagination. The names and moments are used in a story way, not as a news report. If it felt real to you, that means it worked the way stories are meant to work. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a gate where they think they have a wall. Your support helps more stories find their way to you.